Welcome back to another episode of Paladin Financial Talk. I'm your host, Nikki Foley, and I'm joined with, as always, Mr. Tony Shore as our co-host. And drum roll, please. Yes, there we are, Tony. In celebration of Women's History Month, we're dedicating this month to the intersection of women, finance, and empowerment. And so we have a very special guest with us today, Lisa Schreiber, who is investment analyst for Gradient Investments. So, well, Tony, please help me welcome Lisa to the show.
Yeah, welcome, Lisa. Great to be here. I
Yeah.
should have the applause queued up here. That's a
Wow, what an entrance.
yeah. There we go.
Thank
There
you
we
so
go.
much for having me. What an honor.
Absolutely. Well, Lisa, you have quite the background here, and I'm actually going to let Tony just roll down that whole list of accolades that you have.
Oh yeah, Lisa is an incredible person. I've really enjoyed getting to know Lisa and Nikki. I think you're so fortunate that Paladin gets to work alongside Lisa. You are an investment analyst for Gradient Investments, a very fast-growing investment firm, been around quite a while. And prior to joining Gradient, Lisa worked as a private client advisor for a regional bank in Austria. Is that right?
That
In
is
Linz,
correct.
Austria?
Yep.
Am I saying that correct, Linz?
Absolutely correct
Okay.
pronunciation there.
Yeah. Well, and your main responsibility there, Lisa, was investment and insurance consultation of high net worth clients, financial planning, building investment portfolios based on the client's needs and requirements. I think that's fantastic. And you're continuing that with Gradient Investments. You graduated from the University of Applied Sciences, Upper Austria, with a Bachelor of Arts degree in finance management, controlling, and accounting. Wow. I mean, just saying that out loud it makes me shiver. I was told there would be no math. So I don't think they, I applied there too, but I didn't get accepted, Lisa.
No.
That's no. I don't think I could have made it into that school. Very high level. You're a level 2 candidate in the CFA program, right?
That is correct, yes.
Wow. And your media highlights, you've been on Bloomberg, Reuters, Schwab. Did I get that right?
That's correct, yes.
Now, what have I missed from your history? You do a podcast with Gradient Investments, right?
Once a week, yes.
Yes. And what's the name of that
The
podcast?
Pickers Market
The
podcast.
Pickers Market podcast. I love that, with Gradient Investments. And so you've been around the financial world. That's quite a resume. So, Nikki, I know that you have a lot to talk with Lisa about today, right?
Well, first of all, everybody's just going to want to hear Lisa talk. When you hear her beautiful accent there, like it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, it doesn't. I love the accent from Austria. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yes.
Well, Lisa, as we kick off the show, it's important to use our podcast this month to talk a little bit about the history and the significance of women related to finance. And so we are spending this entire month talking about women's history. And I put you in the category of being a history maker. As Tony talked a little bit about her media and what she's doing, one thing we did leave off is that she is regularly speaking across the United States with retirees and pre-retirees. And so not only is she educating us during her time when she is doing media, but also face-to-face presentations. And so there's a lot she's doing. And like I said, I put her as a knowledge leader, somebody that's really essential in teaching consumers, both men and women, about finances in a manner that's really relatable. And so, Lisa, I want to start by saying thank you for that and for all you're doing and helping consumers grow and learn along the way in finance.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's a great honor for me to being able to do that, to be honest. Getting to know our clients and who we serve is always great, and hearing from them and their questions, interacting directly with them is really a great opportunity for me. I'm very thankful for that.
Absolutely. So, Tony, Women's History Month. We have done this a couple years together now, but it's always good to take a look at how did Women's History Month come to be? And I have there's a specific date that I continue to use in our presentations. And we talked a little bit about it last week when we were together. But before I go into that and why it's so important, just start with telling us a little bit about Women's History Month, Tony.
Well, yeah, actually, it started back in 1980 during the Carter administration, which is by the way, also the last time I exercised was during the Carter administration. I'm kidding. Hopefully, I'm kidding. But yeah, President Carter proclaimed National Women's History Week in 1980. 7 years later, Congress actually passed a public law, 100-9, which designated March as Women's History Month. And since 1995, every president has issued a proclamation declaring March Women's History Month. So that's great.
And really, this started with school teachers in California. And I didn't know this until we started doing, this show a couple years ago. And it simply was women were not being documented. And there wasn't, as teachers, there wasn't textbooks to go back and tell the history of women. And women's history is one of my well, first of all, historical fiction books are some of my favorite things to read, and to think that it wasn't that long ago that there wasn't the documentation and the history and all the things that women have done. I just finished reading a book on World War II, and the fact that women were pilots in World War II and they were moving planes from point A to point B, and just there's so much rich history. And it really didn't become a thing until 1980s that they were really starting to document some of this. And so it's fun for me because it's personal that I like this, I like the history of things, but
Yeah.
that we can talk about it in a way that relates to finance as well.
Yeah, I feel honored to be included. I mean, with you two, it's more appropriate talking about Women's History Month. But you're right, Nikki. A teacher in California was looking for the answer to a question about the women's movement that a student had asked, and there were few books about the role women played in American history, and that's what led to this. And I think that's an important thing to note. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, a date, Lisa, that I continue to use, and I know Tony knows what I'm going to talk about when I say this here. It was 1974 that the Equal Credit Opportunity Act came to be. And I think I wasn't born yet. And Lisa, I think you're kind of maybe even a little bit younger than me, but I think about my mom and
I was
Tony, we'll just keep moving without the age conversation here. So my mom, was not having kids yet, but getting ready to have kids. She's somebody that was a teacher at the time. She went on to get her master's. She was married, but you think about the things that she would not have been able to do potentially on her own without this passing. And you think about it was not just about financial freedom, in my opinion. It was about so much more of just freedom in general, that she wasn't depending on a husband or a dad to need to make decisions based on if they were or they were not going to help her get credit. And so basically, if I didn't really explain what the Equal Credit Opportunity Act is when I started this, but banks required women to have a male cosigner to issue credit cards, loans, and mortgages. 1974. I mean, you think about that, it doesn't seem that long ago, and I don't think I'm very old. That's why we're not talking about age, but I do think about my mom and what she was doing
Yeah.
at that time. And wow, what a big deal that it wasn't just financial freedom, but freedom for these women when that came to be. So that brings me to
in
you.
my lifetime, women weren't allowed to have credit cards in their own name. That's crazy. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's nuts.
And so, Lisa, that brings me to you. So, 50 years later, we're having this conversation. Think about if you were in 1974 and you weren't able to do some of those things because you didn't have credit. So, what would that look like for you? Because I think about you being such a big, important piece of educating. And if you would not have been able to do some of the things that the accomplishments because you didn't have a dad or a husband willing to sign for you, think about what that might mean for you.
Mhm. Now, it's crazy to think about, and you just said it, you weren't born at that point, me neither. So we are actually the first generation who are born with these rights, right? With the financial equality rights, and this is just insane to think of. And it's also a good reminder, right, how far women
Yeah.
came. And when I relate that to my own life and thinking about if what would happen if I would have not the rights today, I would not be able to get a mortgage. So the dream of having a house would be pretty far off, right? I would also maybe not be able to get out student loans. So that would restrict me very much from taking the right decisions, right? What career I want to take and what job and industry I want to go in, right? That would also lead to that, hey, that the gender pay gap that we are still struggling today, still, and while it's getting better, it's still out there, right? That would have been would be much worse today still, right? And I think it's also a reminder of how we've come and what kind of women bring to the table and add in value. And leading successful businesses, right? Owning homes and all of that, adding trillions of dollars to the
Right.
US economy every year, right? So this is a great opportunity. But I think it's also like a testament how important it is to preserve that and to keep on working on that, right? And because I think, yeah, financial independence and financial freedom can only be with financial equality to start with, right? And
Yeah.
without that, women are just simply not able to choose the life they want to live and how they want to live it, right? With financial independence, that's not possible. So I think that's a good reminder to keep that in mind, how far we've come and how important it is to stay that track.
Yeah. I mean, that's hugely important. I can't believe that we even have to have this discussion, but it is important. And women face more challenges than men in a lot of financial areas, right?
Absolutely. One of the things that I think is not only, well, back to kind of where Lisa and I met each other, probably, are we 2 years ago, something like that. It's
Today,
so
3 years ago, today, 2 years ago, I have today my Gradient Investment 2-year anniversary.
Oh,
Fun fact.
congratulations. 2 years
yay.
with Gradient. That's
Yes,
great.
yeah.
Time
Well,
flies when you're having fun.
It is. And Tony, I don't know if you know, but Nikki was part of my interview. So she was
Oh,
the first woman in Gradient that I met. So
she interviewed me. She was the first
wow.
person I interviewed with 11 and a half years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to tell this story actually. So I was no longer working for Gradient. So I don't know if our listeners know, but I had spent about 20 years working for Gradient
Yeah.
and the HR and kind of operations side of things. I had already left Gradient as a full-time employee and was, running or working with Jeff in our organization, Paladin Financial. And the president of Gradient Investment stopped me in the hallway. He's like, "Do you think that you could interview this candidate? I think she's really good, but we have to have a female in there. Like, could you
Right.
just stop in for like 10 minutes?" And I said, "Absolutely." And Lisa and I ended up talking for well more than 10 minutes. And it is important to, two things. One, to have, I think, other females around you and to have mentorship, and you can feel some camaraderie when you're going through an experience like that. But Lisa made a point of the wage gap that's still out there. And that is one of the things that I am so proud of as a female business owner is female business owners help knock that out, because you're not going to have a business where you would allow something like that to happen. And that is something that is really important to me, is that it looks like that, and that women can help, close that gap that still exists. So, Lisa, let's talk about a few more unique challenges or opportunities that you feel like women encounter specifically in the financial sector, and what strategies have you found that can be effective for women to overcome these things?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, it's not a secret that it's still the financial industry is still a world built for boys by boys, right? Still very much male dominated, and I can see that. For example, I bring an example. We do once a year work with investments, our elite advisor forum, where we get our largest advisors, bring them together at a conference, having great speakers out there, right? Exchanging experiences, and during the speakers breaks, right? Everyone is trying to get the coffee bar and grab a snack and go to the bathroom real quick. And what I saw is like the line in front of the men's bathroom, never ending. In front of the women's ones, not so much, right? And it's a silly example, but it showed me, it's like, hey, how great would it be and how wonderful if at one point in my career I would have to stay in line as well. Because that would mean, hey, we are finally participating, right? We are finally bringing in our ideas, our values in equal parts. And women have so much to bring to the table in finances, right? We have different ideas. we have different characteristics when we invest. And I do not want to necessarily say it's worse or better than men, not at all, but it's just different, right? And the more ideas we bring to the table, I think the better it is for the whole financial industry and financial stability. And so that is a great way to think of it, right? That hopefully at some point I will experience that. And another way, and you touched on that, Nikki, is the role models, right? And because there's a lack of females in the financial industry, still there's also a lack of women role models. Why there are some out there, some great role models out there, and there are also great male role models out there, right? But you just said it. As a woman, you kind of want to see yourself in somebody else, and you're naturally drawn to women, right? Which was great that you were part of my interview, because that is just hits different, I want to say, right? And so I think we are overall in a transition period where more women join the party, where more women join the industry, and what creates a lot of opportunities, but most and foremost, it also comes with a huge responsibility for all the women that are currently working in the financial industry, because it means like at some point for us, we are hopefully honored to be that kind of role models for other women joining the industry, right? And at the beginning of their career, trying to figure out what they want to do, seeing more women in the financial industry, and kind of we're hopefully at some point paving the way for women that come after us. So there's great opportunity there.
I'll add one more thing to that, Lisa. This is just from the lens that I'm looking, but it seems like there's been a big push in the last, let's say, 3 years to talk a lot more about the softer side when we are interacting with the end consumer. So let me give an example. We have been trained as financial advisors for so many years is you do your fact finding. You have to gather all the essential information, which of course is critical in the world we live in, and it's a highly regulated world. But there wasn't as much emphasis on the feeling finding side of things. And so as I say that, there's been a big trend in the last 3 years to really get in and make sure that you're finding out, first and foremost, I mean, at minimum, working with what are their ultimate goals, but it's much, much softer than it used to be. It's about values. It's about things like family, that it's not just age, date, and birth of your kids. It's about what are you trying to accomplish and what do you want your retirement to look like? And then how do we begin with the end in mind and make sure that we create a world that fits really who you are. And that has been a big change in the last few years. Is it used to be ask the right questions. How can we get through them? How can we be efficient? How can technology help us? Blah, blah, blah. But everything that people are talking about as we continue to be trained in the industry is about how do you get to that softer side and really make sure that who you're working with and sitting across the table from actually opens up to you.
I think that's great. I have a quick question for Lisa, since before we move on, and I know we're focusing on women's history and women in finance today, but I can't let the market volatility, I can't let anyone from Gradient Investments off the hook without asking about the volatility that we've seen so far this year and this week. What's going on with that, and what should our listeners out there, men and women especially if they're widows, what should they keep in mind during a time like this?
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting times, right? We hear a lot in the news and in the headlines, right? A lot of geopolitical unrest. We have policy changes, right? The unword of the year, I think, by now is already tariffs. So that creates a lot of uncertainties, and what the market does not like at all is uncertainties.
Yeah.
So what I always say helps in that way, and is the right path to do, is zooming out a little bit and taking a deep breath, right? It might sound silly, but zooming out a little bit on your overall financial plan, on your overall financial goals, on your willingness and your preferred risk level, right? And if you were invested, for example, the last 2 years, and we saw some 2 years of great returns, right? To as a plus 20% both years, then you might be a little bit ahead of in your financial planning already, right? And when you also are focusing on those years, we had corrections as well, both years. Every year there are corrections, no matter how positive the S&P 500 kind of returns. And So I wanna say, when it comes to corrections, and while they are hurtful and not easy to look at, so there's no way to sugarcoat that, right?
Sure.
Just focusing on, this is happening every year, and it's a normal part of the process, right? This is
Yeah.
nothing we need to be afraid of, but it is something we need to be prepared for.
Yes.
And because it is a normal part of the process, it is also accounted for in your financial plan. So your financial plan is set up for that, to weather those times, right? And again, zooming out a little bit, time and time in history proves again and again that people get rewarded when they are staying in the game, right? Because it's time in the market that counts, and not timing the market.
Yeah.
But there are some different ways to prepare for that, obviously. I mean, at Gradient Investments, for example, we themed the year of 2025 as the year of bring an umbrella. That's our theme for the year, and what it means is basically, it does not mean it rains, or it's bad weather or bad markets the whole year, but what it means is you are prepared in case bad weather arises.
Sure.
And there are different things to be prepared for. Again, reassess your risk level, right? Maybe rebalancing your portfolio. So all of that is different ways to prepare for that overall.
That's great. And that's, Nikki, that's where you come in. That's where Paladin Financial comes in, and that's what you help your clients do, and you can help our listeners do that as well, correct?
Absolutely. And that really is the long term game. We just had a conversation with somebody yesterday, a female, and I knew that as she has seen the volatility over the last couple days, or even, just in recent, I knew that she was already going to be feeling, uncertain. And so even though you just have, it's being on the call, it's being able to reassure that we have a longer term plan in place, and steady Eddie is the name of the game sometimes during all of this.
That's
So
great.
Lisa, let's get back to the women's side of things just for a moment here. What are some of the statistics, as we have been talking about women, that I think is important to pull out in front of us? So things maybe related to the size and the number of women right now taking over wealth in the United States, and just give us some perspective on why this topic is so important, and why it's so important that we're talking in a way that speaks to women.
So we always hear it more and more, the term the great wealth transfer is upon us, right? Or it's actually happening at the moment. And what it means is, by the end of the decade, women are said to be the greatest beneficiaries, first of all, and manage over $30 trillion in U.S. assets. I mean, I think no one really can compute this number. It's huge, and it's an awesome opportunity for women, right? When wealth from one generation moves to the next one. But it also comes with a responsibility, because it means at some point in the life of a woman, because we have higher life expectancies than men normally, sorry, Tony, that means that every woman will probably make decisions around finances at some point in the life, and we need to be prepared for that. And while it is sometimes a little bit intimidating what's going on with markets and all of that, right? And not everyone might be interested in that, right? Women kind of see the importance of managing, and the importance of their financial stability and financial independence, and managing their finances, right? But they might be not overly interested in doing that themselves, right? And what I say to that is, hey, get some help. You do not have to do it alone, right? There is some great help out there. Nikki, you are a perfect example for that. Get some help. Get a co-pilot on the way to your financial on your financial journey, right? That helps you along the way, helps you keep in check, helps you keep track of everything. You're not in this alone, and we need to be prepared for that. But great opportunity ahead for women, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that ties together some of the things that we've already talked about. Is one, women are a little bit more attracted to a conversation that is feeling minded. So it's not just about the facts. And then they don't have to know everything about this, and they don't even have to have interest in it. But being confident to carry forward with either A, finding a professional to partner with them, or confident that they do enjoy it and to move forward. And what happens right now, the reality is a lot of women are active, but what they don't do is maybe the more longer term side of things. So they focus on the day to day, the purchasing, the getting the kids to camp, the knowing what's coming in and out of the bank account. And it's a bridge to start getting into that longer term goal that we hope through people like Lisa and myself and the world that we're living in, as we can continue to educate to get more women playing in that realm, either on their own or with a professional.
Absolutely.
And Lisa, do you see in, kind of, you have a long career in front of you and you know so much already, but have you always loved numbers? Is this something that has come natural to you? And do you feel like it is something that women should try to tackle, or be who you are and figure out how to supplement around you? Or kind of, what is your opinion on this?
So I was not always a numbers girl, to be honest. So it
Okay.
came not from the very beginning to myself. I can remember back in high school, I had some accounting classes. That was the first time, right, with economics and all the accounting and all of companies and all of that, and calculating financial ratios. And I back then I had no experience, no work experience, right? So it didn't really come together for me back then. I was like, why are we doing this? Like, what sense does it didn't make a lot of sense. I was 16, 17 at that time. And then I started in the real world. I started working and it all came together, right? Why are we doing this? The whole financial industry, the whole financial world came together for me. And I found my love for numbers. And that's over 10 years ago by now. And I kept the track, I kept on track since that, right? But again, and I think an important thing here is to get exposed to that as early as possible, right? Kids and in school, and it's not always the focus now, but I think it's changes also here, is to get exposed to that, because it influences our whole life. The rest of our life is how we deal with money, how we manage money, how we are setting up goals. That is such an important part, right? And being exposed to that, at least, again, if we are interested in the long run or not, we have help that we can tap into, but being exposed to that, at least, to maybe help find our profession and our love for that, is I think a great part.
I think that's a good point that you make. One of the things that we do at Paladin is we always offer a complimentary conversation with the kids of the youth of our clients. But we also do a lot in the community to be educating, because I remember there is not enough education in the high school level for sure. And then it's all about, if you want to, at the college level. I wish that every education system required at some level there to be a basic finance. And I think that's starting to happen, but
Mhm.
not nearly as far as along as it should be, in my opinion. And so I think the advice to our listeners are, whether you're young or you are a grandparent or a parent, figure out how you can expose your kids or your grandkids to the financial side of things. And we're happy to offer an entry level kind of conversation that we already have structured. It's easier for us to do that and to give back to our community by having conversations with the youth. What are some of the trends that you see, Lisa, as we start to wrap up and kind of bring a conclusion to our conversation today? What are some of the trends that you see as you are traveling across the United States, speaking with pre-retirees, retirees, which are parents and grandparents, youth? It could be all across the board. What are some of the things that you're seeing, and something that maybe people are not understanding?
Mhm. So a lot of the conversations I have, I'm going out to present on women and wealth, right? So I talk a lot about the investing challenges that women face still out there, the obstacles that we face when we want to put our money to good use, but also about the characteristics that women show. And let me tell you, women are the born investors. We are just naturals out there, right? Sometimes we need to be reminded of that. Let me put it that way. And also, I talk a lot about the markets, the economy, right, and what kind of come with my crazy charts, right? So I try to make it as easy and as fun as possible so that people can relate, right, even though they might not be interested in that. And what I'm seeing is, and what I'm hearing often is, yeah, I know it's important, but it's just so much. There's a lot going on, right, with the economy and how it all comes together. It's just in the news and the headlines. What is really interesting, how we can scrape out the noise a little bit and focus on what's really important, right? And what I'm also seeing is there is some form of confidence gap, and you mentioned that, right, that the stats are like at just 1/3 of women are actually confident enough to put their money to good use and to invest. And while we all have greater earnings and savings power, like greater than ever before for women, we're still sometimes a little bit not confident enough. not about knowledge. So we know our stuff when it comes to money, but it's a question of confidence, right? So seeing that and kind of talking in easy way to how it all comes together, that you're not alone in this, and kind of what characteristics we show, right? That helps a lot of women to kind of see, hey, it's not that complicated actually, right? Financial media suggests it is complicated, throwing out all the weird financial terms out there, and everything is catered to men, right? How to beat the market and financial models, sometimes you mentioned that as well, focused on male preferences, male family roles, and their career paths, while women show just different characteristics, right? And invest in a different approach. And showing that really helps to kind of get on and really get out and start their financial journey.
Absolutely. I'll use an example of just Jeff and I. Jeff and I do a lot of appointments together, and I think so highly of my husband, and I know he is brilliant, and that can be intimidating in itself. And I remember so early when I was doing the planning with him, I would just let him take the lead because this was his realm and this is where he shines. As I have continued to spend more time and we do more appointments together, I don't agree with all of the ways. And you can, slice a piece of cake 10 different ways. But it is, women have to have exposure and the constant just educating of themselves. And you don't have to go super deep with it, but I will now have the confidence where I challenge Jeff, especially when we're working with women clients. What about this? Or, I think that they would respond better to it like this. Or
Mhm.
have we thought about this perspective? And so I think it's so important to, one, continue to have exposure to gain that confidence that Lisa's been talking about. But two, just ask, just push a little bit. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen is you get an answer. And then you can ask a few more questions. And so it's so important to just get that confidence because it makes a world of difference along the way. Well, I,
Absolutely.
I think as we wrap up here, Lisa, I think one of the things that we both have said at a couple different times, it's so important to have a mentor in front of you and to be an advocate for mentorship and supporting through a group of women. Tell us about your experience and maybe how that has moved the needle in the financial sector for you, and potentially how somebody could find somebody that is a female and can serve that role for them.
Yeah. Um, and that leads back to the earlier question where we talked about, hey, there's a maybe a lack of role models out there yet, right? Which is intimidating when you're in the beginning of your career and searching for ways to set your foot in the finance industry. And I think what at least my experience and over the last years, your mentors change the people that you will find, and you will find your people throughout your way, but they will change, right? You will learn different things from different people, and I had great mentors on the way, both male and female. And yeah, you will find your people. And what I've learned, especially as an example, as I moved here nearly 3 years ago to beautiful Minnesota, and I moved here with my husband. I knew nobody else, right? I had no relationship outside of him, so I was like, yeah, I want to meet locals. I want to meet Minnesotans, right? I want to get some friends and get some like-minded people that are interested in the things that I'm interested in, like maybe in the financial industry, but also generally. And I've found there are so many great resources. I found women kind of setting up a women's book club focused on personal growth and finances. And none of these women were actually working in the financial industry. They were all just, hey, we know it's important. We have no idea
Hmm,
about that now. We learn together and we grow together.
that's
And
great.
also, I saw like industry events, right? Industry events outside, not related to finance, right? Just people were like, hey, we are not in the industry when we do not have the perfect skills here, but we know it's important. So we learn together and grow together. So there's so many great resources in every city here. And I think this is a great way, because no matter where you are in your financial journey, what situation or questions you might have, there is someone out there who already faced that or who is in that situation now. And people are so happy and so open to share their lessons learned, their experiences. You just have to find them. So there's great opportunities out there. I'm a huge advocate for networking groups, no matter if people are in the industry or not, and no matter what level of experience they have. Now we all learn from each other, and this is a great way.
Well, that's fantastic, Lisa. And I think it's so important for us just to use this month in March to make sure that we have a understanding of the historical significance of women and as it relates to finance. And for me, Lisa, you are somebody that has a place in women's history for what you have done and what you are doing already. Being on the Reuters and the Bloomberg, I mean, you were out there telling the nation and giving them information on a national level, and then the speaking that you do locally and one-on-one with retirees and pre-retirees. It's really you're influential, you're encouraging, and you're inspiring others. And so I want to thank you
Thank
from
you.
all of us. And then I think, is there anything that we, I guess just to kind of recap some of the things that I heard today is one, have confidence, just expose yourself, find something that's right and find your people. And that can be all over the place that you might be doing that and where you least expect it. And so that was probably the simplest thing that I took away from today is figuring out how to get that exposure that we've been talking about. So look for a group and just get involved. Anything though else that you would add to that, Lisa?
I would say maybe an example again when it comes to what we hear in the news, right? And there's a lot of noise out there, and I know it seems intimidating in times, but I just wanted to reassure you also the professionals are intimidated sometimes, right? I had
Yeah.
to learn throughout my career how to focus on what's really important, right? How to dial it down, how to get back. And what helped me especially in being less fearful sometimes, and I had to learn it over the years. I go back and focus back on why I'm doing this and for who I'm doing this. And at the end of the day, I'm helping, and there's big numbers throwing around, right? And big numbers that we hear all day. But at the end of the day, this is the life savings of someone, the hard earned money. And I remember back, I helped that person preserve and grow their wealth over time. And when I'm focusing, that's my why I'm doing this and for who I'm doing this. And that helps a lot getting out, scrapping out the noise a little bit and being less fearful.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you can help just one person,
Yep,
think what a big deal that is for somebody as they
absolutely.
go into retirement. Well, thank you guys again for joining us. Thank you for helping us kick off Women's History Month with Paladin Financial. And as we wrap up, you can always reach Paladin at 651-842-8406 or at paladinfinancial.com. Anything else, Tony, before we wrap up?
No, I think that'll do it. But a very special thanks to Lisa Schreiber for coming in and being a guest on the show. As always, a great show, Nikki. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Paladin Financial Talk.